Hello, this is Pharmacist Keith Abell, and I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel. Now, when I originally started doing these videos, my intention was to teach folks how to get control of their finances and to teach them how to grow their income, to do like Dave Ramsey suggests, and to live a life of financial peace and prosperity. But as a pharmacist, I really felt like I was missing a big piece of the prosperity puzzle, that there was more to prosperity than just the financial side of things. Health and wellness have also to be taken into consideration. I believe that prosperity is actually a way of living and thinking, not just having more things or more money. To have time and the financial freedom to enjoy life at your own pace, to achieve personal growth and financial security without sacrificing family and health. To not live paycheck to paycheck. Health, wealth, personal development, familial fulfillment, and personal self-satisfaction all blended together in a balance and harmony. The ability to weather all storms of life, whether they're financial or physical, and to assist friends to cope with their struggles by coming alongside them and helping them rise above the turmoil that life throws at all of us. I think prosperity involves three things. Money, earned in a way that aligns with your inner self and your values. Happiness, which encompasses your health, service to others, and growing key relationships. And sustainability, which is a method of making money so you can prosper, increasing your health and your well-being for the long term. Now, there's no guarantee that rising early or eating the right things and getting a good night's sleep will make you rich. But the research shows that it does set you on the right track for success. After all, what good is your wealth if you're in poor health? And what good is your health if you've got no wealth? I want to be on that journey with you, which is why I've created this channel. In these videos, I want to help you to be there with you and to help you have a better physical health and share with you what I've learned over the past 25 years as being a pharmacist, using nutrition and supplementation to reduce our needs for the dangerous pharmaceutical drugs. I want to share with you what I learned in the financial services industry, how to get out of debt and achieve financial peace. And I want to help you along with your emotional well-being, as well as cover personal and professional development topics. Now, we're going to cover a lot of ground through these episodes, and I hope you walk with me. Let this video channel, this YouTube channel, be your prescription for health, wealth, personal development, familial fulfillment, and your overall personal self-satisfaction. Today I've got a special guest, Dr. Joel Walach. In this episode, Dr. Wallach and I talk about blood sugar issues, nutrition, and supplementation, and how all this is connected to bring better health and personal well-being. After all, like I said before, what good is your wealth and your prosperity if you have poor health? Oh, by the way, if you find value in this episode, please share it with your friends. Also, hit the subscribe button, and be sure to hit the bell symbol and select all so you'll be notified when a post in the future is put up so you don't miss anything. So let's get on with today's show.
All right, everybody. I want to welcome you to the Campaign for Nutrition podcast with special guest, Dr. Joel Walach. He is a veterinarian, a pathologist, and a researcher in nutrition and wellness. And today we're going to talk about bone and joint issues and what causes them, what's behind all the epidemic of bone and joint problems in America, arthritis and all the other related things, and what type of nutrition and supplementation and so forth that you should take to help offset that and give your body what it needs to help support and repair itself. Dr. Wallach, how are you this morning?
Well, very fine. Thank you. I'm going to throw in, I'm also a physician. You left that out.
Sorry about that.
Naturopathic physician licensed in California and Oregon. But yeah, of course, all vertebrates require the 90 essential nutrients, 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. That's because all of our tissues come and go. Even bones come and go. Cartilage comes and goes. Tendons, ligaments, connective tissue comes and goes. And our stem cells require raw materials to rebuild or repair cells and all these tissues and mineral reserves and so forth. And so it's a constant flow of stuff going out, and it should be a constant flow of stuff coming in to replace it. And if you don't replace it, the outgo exceeds the income, and so it's kind of like nutritionally you go bankrupt.
Okay, so what causes the nutrition deficiencies, and what deficiencies are there that's related specifically to the bone and joint problems?
Well, we're talking about primarily minerals, but there's vitamins involved too. You know, vitamin D3 and vitamin A and vitamin C and vitamin K and so forth. All of these are involved in bone health. But then there's 60 minerals that are required. And unfortunately, Pharmacist Keith, nutritional minerals do not occur in a uniform blanket around the crust of the earth. They occur in veins like chocolate and chocolate-ripple ice cream. They occur in veins like gold and silver and coal. And some places have none. That's why, you know, in the old days, herds of wild animals would migrate through areas and they wouldn't stay there very long because there's nothing there. Okay, same way with people. They'd have flocks and herds and they would migrate through places because they knew if they stayed in one certain place, all their animals would die. So they wouldn't stay in these places very long. It was just a route to get from here to there. Well, these nutritional minerals occur in veins, as I said. And, you know, in some places, there'll be 2 minerals. In some places, there'll be 5. In some places, there's 8. Some places, there's 12. In some places, there's 20. In some places, there's 25. In some places, there's 30. In some places, there's 40. In some places, there's 60. In some places, there's 70. And when you look at the health and longevity of animals and peoples, you can just tell, okay, there's got to be a lot of minerals there because the average lifespan in this particular area, this country or this zone is in their 80s and 90s. Whereas 500 miles away, the average lifespan is 45. Which one's going to have more minerals? And, you know, when a doctor says, look, you got some arthritis here, you got some bone and joint problems, you got some ball and socket problems, your hip, your knee, your skull, and your first cervical vertebrae, and your knees and so forth, your ankles and your elbows and your shoulders. You got problems here, and we're going to have to do some, you know, double knee replacements for $50,000 a piece. And, we're going to have to give you a hip replacement and all that kind of stuff for $50,000 a piece. But I can give you some pain relief for maybe it'll work for 6 months or a year, but after that, we're going to have to do the replacement. Well, you need to flee from that doctor because he has 3 kids he wants to put through college, and he's using you to put his kids through college. Okay? He's either ignorant or a thief. There's only one thing worse than a thief, and that's an ignorant thief. Okay? And so in veterinary medicine, we don't have health insurance for animals. And a farmer would go broke in 1 year if he had the veterinarian come out and, you know, do all these things for animals like they do for people. And so we learned a long time ago that if we put minerals in the animal's food, we eliminate over 600 different diseases that afflict people in all vertebrates. And so when I was a kid, to make a long story short, I had terrible behavioral problems starting when I was age 4. And my mom and dad, you know, took me to city doctors. They took me to 20 of them over a period of 5 years. By the time I was 9, I'd seen 20 different doctors, and they all wanted to put me on drugs and institutionalize me. And the last one was a lady, pediatrician, eye doctor, behaviorist kind of thing. And her name was Mary Jane Skeffington. And I'll never forget, I'm 9 years old. She says, well, we're going to have to institutionalize him. I said, well, Mom, what does that mean? She says, well, they're going to put you in a hospital. I said, how long am I going to be in there? And she said, well, maybe for the rest of your life. Well, to a 9-year-old, that didn't sound good.
No.
Okay. So that night, when everybody else went to sleep, I'm just sitting there thinking on my bed, thinking, why is it we're eating the same food that animals eat from the same soil, and they don't have the problems we have? The baby animals don't have the problem I have. What's going on here? And I thought, uh-oh, we're giving them all these vitamins and minerals we don't take. So the next morning, I began to eat the animal food, and in 3 days' time, I was cured after 5 years of getting worse and worse and worse and worse. In 3 days, Pharmacist Keith, I was cured. And I knew that I knew back then that there was a big, big discrepancy between what doctors did for humans and what veterinarians did for animals. And so that's what got me going in this direction. And of course, when you're looking at horses that pull plows, you're looking at race horses. They've got a bad thing going on here in one of the racetracks in California, in San Diego. I think this year so far they've had 19 horses they had to destroy because they had hip problems and knee problems and shoulder problems and so forth. And, you know, to put a artificial joint in a racehorse is a waste of money and time. And so they just destroy them. And so what I need to do is look at, see, you know, what feed they're giving them. If they're just giving them oats and hay, or are they giving them some kind of pellet that doesn't have a very good spread of the minerals necessary for bone health. There's something going on, because you can't have 19 horses in one track. All the other tracks are fine.
Yeah, they're trying to blame it on the track and the
they're trying to blame
composition.
The surface of the track. Yeah.
Yeah, that never made sense to me. From Kentucky, you know, being familiar with horse racing, it just never made sense that one track would have all these problems, but I'm sure other tracks across the country have the same turf, and that never made sense to me.
Yeah, no, it's a food problem, and so I'm going to start working on that here before this month is over, because I know I'll figure it out in just a couple of days by looking at what they're feeding them compared to what the other tracks are feeding their horses. The other tracks aren't having any problems. So it's got to be something very, very significantly different.
Right.
And so, to make a long story short, I went to agricultural school, University of Missouri. My major was in animal husbandry and nutrition. My minor was in field crops and soils. I also went to veterinary school at the University of Missouri, got that degree. I got half my pathology degree at the University of Missouri. I went to Iowa State University to try and finish it up. And halfway through that, Marlon Perkins from the old Mutual Omaha Wild Kingdom show, I had worked for him as a kid. He sent me to Africa, and I worked for 2 years in the White Rhino Conservation Project. And as a pathology student, I ran into the first mass die-off in America from pollution. It was a holiday, 1962 is Christmas, and everybody else was on holiday, and I was there by myself, and I figured it out. 500 sheep died in one night. They were perfectly healthy, 6 months old, perfect, beautiful wool, perfect weight. They were going to go to the butchers to be butchered in a week or so, and they all died in one night. And so they brought me 50 bodies, and I figured it out. They had goiter. They all had goiter, and they all had methemoglobin. Their blood was the color of chocolate milk instead of blood. And so it was all due to nitrate poisoning. You know, the fertilizer from the neighbor got into their water supply, and chronic 6 months worth of nitrates in their drinking water caused them also to have goiter. Instead of their thyroid glands being the size of an almond, they were the size of a plum. And so I got it all written up, and my professor said, well, this is your paper. You go ahead and publish it yourself. So I published it in 2 scientific journals. I sent copies to everybody. I was so excited, governors and senators, and also to Marlon Perkins. So when I was in Africa, he used my paper to get a $25 million grant from the National Institutes of Health, NIH, to study pollution, and he wanted me to be the pathologist on the project. I can't refuse. Marlon Perkins came back and did that. 10 years, did 20,000 autopsies, and showed no zoo animals in all the big zoos in the United States died of pollution. No people living around the zoos died of pollution. But they all died of nutritional deficiency diseases in the zoo and people around the zoos. There were no genetically transmitted diseases, there were no autoimmune diseases, and there were no genetically transmitted birth defects. As a result, pharmacist Keith, my thesis for my postdoctoral fellowship, which is the equivalent of a PhD degree, is in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. I'm extremely proud of that. And right now, between Dr. Milan and myself, we have 15 published books. I think it's like 12 of them are between she and I together. The most recent one, It's All in Your Head, where we talk about osteoporosis and arthritis in the skull. So that brings us to today's subject, bone and joint stuff.
Yeah, you talked about in the past, you know, I traveled quite a lot with you, so I've been able to spend a lot of time with you. And you talked about in the past that back in Africa, you all put out all this clean water for the animals, and they wouldn't even drink the clean water. And that was one of those other aha moments that you had as to the link between the minerals and health. Yeah,
they wanted to drink this, natural pond water that it was muddy and all that kind of stuff. Well, it had minerals in it, and they were driven to seek out minerals. And this is a behavior called pica. You can look this up in any dictionary. It doesn't have to be a medical dictionary. Just any dictionary will have the word P-I-C-A, pica. And this is where people get cravings. That's why they have snack foods and that kind of stuff. And they have treats and things because people are deficient in minerals and they're craving snacks. And so they have all these snack foods. Well, before they had pretzels and potato chips and corn puffs, Grandma used to eat wood ashes out of the wood stove. Okay? Grandma used to go out in the backyard with a spoon and eat dirt. Little kids would chew on their crib, the rail on the crib, so that's why they put that fiberglass sheath on the crib rail to keep the babies from eating the crib, and they called it cribbing. Now, when horses chewed on the top rail of their stall in the barn, they called it cribbing because it's like the babies chewing the crib. And it's all because, that's because they're deficient, in minerals. And so that's why the agricultural industry came out with salt blocks for the animals. But these big salt blocks, if they're white, there's just sodium chloride, which will attract the animals to lick it. But if you see the red salt blocks, they have trace minerals and major minerals added to the salt. And those animals will stand there all day and lick that trace mineral salt block.
Yeah, we've got up in Kentucky, we've got some natural salt licks. And I know the pioneers used to go to that area because they knew the animals would be there for their hunting.
The deer would go there. Yep. And of course, now when you look at animal feeds, the veterinarians know this, so the animal feeds, they're very heavily weighted towards minerals in the animal feeds. And so this is where I learned how important minerals were. They weren't just something that some theorist was thinking about, that an animal would run over you and kill you to get to the minerals.
It's amazing how you connect those dots. As a kid, the calcium tablets, and then you get to Africa and it's the muddy water. You go to an Amish farm and you see all the rails all chewed up by the horses. That's the rails where the sweaty palms of the Amish guys would touch those rails. And it's just amazing how you connected all those dots. And I'm sure that's why you were chosen for the research project that you did.
Because I published that paper that first mass die-off from pollution in those sheep. I got that figured out, and I was only 22 years old at the time. And so, but I had been submersed in this mineral thing by the time I was 9 years old, because I had cured myself of something that was going to get me institutionalized for the rest of my life. And it was just simple nutritional deficiencies.
Let's get on to bone and joint problems. I know a major surgery that we see, I work in long-term care, and the major thing that I see is either knee replacements or hip replacements in the elderly. So what's going on there? What's causing so many of these problems? And is there a simple solution to help those people repair themselves? Because you and I both believe that our bodies were divinely designed by God to repair themselves if they get all their 90 essential nutrients. So what's going on with the huge spike in replacements?
Well, you're exactly right, Pharmacist Keith. We were given by the good Lord all of the equipment to repair ourselves and maintain ourselves. But we do need the raw materials for the equipment to do its work. The same thing, you could have the most beautiful factory that can produce anything, all the techie stuff and medical stuff and machines and this, that, and the other. But if you don't have trained technicians to operate it, if you don't have all the raw materials to put in the machinery, as they say in France, there ain't nothing coming out the other end. And the same thing is true with our joints. And you notice that most of these surgeries are done on weight-bearing joints, the hips and the knees. And because they're weight-bearing, they're going to wear out quicker than a finger joint, which, you can kind of, what should I say? You can kind of say, okay, I'm not going to use these, like my little finger, I'm not going to use that. And so that's not one they usually do a joint transplant in,
right.
It's a little finger. But your knees and your hips is weight-bearing, going up and down stairs, and quite a bit of movement, and carrying not only your body weight, but also, carrying 40-pound bags of sand, or 40-pound bags of grain for animals, or moving furniture and that kind of stuff.
Let's talk about what's in those joints. what's the mechanics that's going on in those joints that's breaking down?
Okay, well, a joint is actually a rather complex structure. It's not just bone. At the end of the bone, of course, you have cartilage, and then you have surrounding that cartilage, you have glands that make synovial fluid, okay, and then you have a joint capsule to keep the synovial fluid in that joint to maximize its benefit in that focal area. And then you have tendons and ligaments and connective tissue attached to the edges of those joints to move them. As the muscles contract, it'll make the joint rotate or go up and down, and backwards and forwards, and all that kind of stuff. So you have movement going on, and if there's no lubrication, it's like a car engine, the pistons going up and down with no oil in it. Okay, you're in trouble. And a lot of people, they just say, I'm having a little bit of joint discomfort here, and so they go in there for their annual physical and say, I've got some joint discomfort, doc. Shouldn't I be taking some vitamins and minerals or something? Or you got some kind of cream I can put on my knee or my hip? Nah, don't waste your time on that kind of stuff. Just eat well, you get everything you need. That's the famous line from doctors. Just eat well, you get everything you need. Well, the doctors who say that should be put in jail for the rest of their life for reckless endangerment. The equivalent would be for you to ask your mechanic, what's the best kind of oil to put in my car? Because I'm going to be traveling on vacation. I don't want the engine to burn up. So what oil should I put in my car? And the mechanic would say, don't waste your money on oil. Just put dirt from Texas and Oklahoma in there. There's bound to be some oil in that dirt because those are big oil producing countries, Texas and Oklahoma. So just use dirt from, it's only 10 cents a quart for dirt from Texas and Oklahoma. Put that in your car. Well, you won't get too far with that. And you'd be running around, even if you were an insane person, you'd be telling everybody in your city what a crazy mechanic this is. Don't go to them. He just wants you to put dirt in your car instead of oil. But when a doctor says, just eat well, you get everything you need, the patient's right, my doctor says, I can get everything I need by eating well.
Yeah.
Bam, you're dead. Okay.
Yeah, they tell them to eat well, and then they tell them to exercise more, which is putting more stress on the joint.
Yes.
And then they give them an opioid to control the pain, which we know is what's happened there. It's driven the opioid crisis that we have. And I'm starting to see in long-term care that they're starting to give these patients, glucosamine and things like that, but they're just given such small amounts that it's not helping, and they're going on into the joint replacement shortly after that. It's just...
Yeah, of course, it's $50,000 a knee, it's $50,000 a hip, and that puts their son through college. And
pays for the yacht.
Yeah, and so why would they tell you the basic truth is take the 90 essential nutrients? And if you do heavy work, you need to take extra. Throw in some extra MSM, vitamin D3, some collagen, in addition to the 90 essential nutrients. And, just because you're doing that kind of work or you're exercising, you need more. And of course, I've dealt with some pretty famous athletes, some pretty famous, professional athletes for their joint problems. Theo Ratliff, in fact, he's the guy, we invented our rebounder sports drink with 100 nutrients in it. Things like Red Bull has only 2 or 3 nutrients. It has some salt in it, but it's mainly sugar and caffeine because it's really an energy drink. And the same way with Gatorade, it's mostly an energy drink. It's got sugar and caffeine in it. It has a few nutrients. The only energy drink, the only nutrient drink, the only nutrient replacement drink, and the only sports drink that has the 78 minerals in it and 100 nutrients is Rebound. So we're very, very proud of that. We made that for Theo Ratliff.
Well, let me interrupt you real quickly before we go any further. I do need to read a disclaimer that's required by the FDA and the FTC and everybody else. Any food and dietary supplements mentioned in this presentation are intended to contribute to the daily diet and overall health and are not intended for use in the prevention, treatment, mitigation, or cure of any disease or health-related condition. Individuals who have or suspect they have an illness or who wish to commence a diet or exercise program should consult an appropriately licensed healthcare practitioner for medical history evaluation, diagnosis, treatment, and health recommendations. And I would like to go on one step further there and tell you when you go see your doctor, interview them and find out what their opinion is on supplementation and nutrition in that, because we need to take a holistic approach. And if your doctor does not want to talk about nutrition and supplementation or doesn't think it's worthwhile, you need to go seek out a different prescriber. My opinion.
Yeah, of course, there's lots of doctors who are interested in nutrition, and many of them work with us. We're very proud and happy to work with them all over the world. And it's one of those things where you have to look at the statistics. Now, I'm going to throw one out there. This came out about 10 days ago. Johns Hopkins, very famous medical school. You're probably familiar with this data.
Yes, I am. After we talked last time, I went and looked it up. It's amazing.
Yeah. See, yeah, look it up. Don't believe me. Look it up. It's from Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland, very famous medical school. And they looked at the number, they looked at the top 10 causes of death in America. Number one is cardiovascular disease. I mean, that's always been number one cause of death. A 23-year-old football player just died, professional football player just died while he was out hiking. And so he probably died of a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy heart attack, a deficiency of a single mineral. Okay. Then number two, they said was cancer. It was the number two cause of death in America in hospitals. Okay. Number one cause of death in hospitals is heart disease. Number two cause of death, Johns Hopkins said, was cancer. But was it really cancer killing the patient, or was it the chemotherapy and radiation killing the patient? They didn't divide that up, okay? And then they said the number three cause of death in hospitals in America is medical errors. They use the term errors. Medical errors is the number three cause of death. I mean, what? And they said 250,000 to 440,000 people are killed, is the word they use, are killed each year. And remember, this is Johns Hopkins. I'm just quoting them. That's not me.
Yep.
And that just came out like 10 days ago. The number three cause of death in hospitals in America doesn't say anything about the medical causes of death or the medical deaths outside of hospitals. This is just in hospitals. 250,000 to 440,000 each year are killed in hospitals by medical errors. Okay, wrong dosage, wrong medication, giving two medications that should not be given together. They cut a blood vessel during surgery. They dropped, I know, patients that they've actually dropped, off the gurney, and they broke their neck. They died of the broken neck in the hospital. They were just there, for a tooth thing or something simple. Okay.
That's just the hospital deaths.
That's just the hospital.
Count all the other deaths.
It doesn't count the other deaths outside the hospitals. That's correct. So you want to, that's why I always tell people, you want to be involved as much as you can in your own treatment. I don't care how good your doctor is or how good you think your doctor is. You want to be involved. And that's why in the beginning we came up with the trilogy of books, Let's Play Doctor, Let's Play Herbal Doctor, Passport to Aromatherapy, so people could learn how to take care of themselves, how to do their own tests and everything. And you can determine whether you have arthritis or osteoporosis yourself. You can determine if you have diabetes and high blood pressure yourself. You don't need to go to a doctor to make these diagnoses. These little trilogy books. And now we call the quartet of books, Let's Play Doctor, Let's Play Herbal Doctor, Passport to Aromatherapy. The fourth one, now it's all in your head, which is osteoporosis of the skull. Okay. And of course you got the joint between the skull and the first cervical vertebrae. Okay, the atlas. And then you have, let's see here, you got your jawbone, okay, that's a joint. And then you have osteoporosis of the skull, which squeezes 12 pairs of cranial nerves and the spinal cord, which gives you 25 other diseases. Now, so we created what we call the Healthy Bone and Joint Pack. So you don't have to be too clever. I mean, even if you don't know much, what would you use a Healthy Bone and Joint Pack for? Healthy bone joints, okay? And it's 1 per 100 pounds of body weight. And then we came up with Pro Joint FX for people who are on the go and you didn't want to mix 5 different products together and carry that with you. So we have these capsules called Pro Joint FX, which has kind of everything in it for your bones and joints. And I take them in addition to the Healthy Bone and Joint Pack. Okay. And then I also take vitamin D3, the MSM, Pro Joint FX, And we also have what we call the collagen peptides, which is collagen in the Healthy Bone and Joint Pack. We have collagen from beef. It's called glucogel. You can get it in either capsules or liquids. And then, of course, now we have the collagen peptides, which come from fish, poultry, sheep, and beef. And so I take it all. Well, I'm 80 years old. Most people think I'm in my 50s because of my activity level. Okay, and all my bones are like rocks. Okay, I don't take any pain medications. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. And I faithfully have been taking these nutrients, Pharmacist Keith, twice a day for 71 years, going on 72 years now. There we go.
I can attest to that because, when I've traveled with you, you've got your, when we go to breakfast, you've got your all your supplements there, and you take them religiously. You never fail to take them. So
that's correct. Yeah, God gave us the equipment to repair ourselves. We just need to give it the raw materials.
When you're taking these types of supplements and you're getting all that you need, what's happening in the bones and the joints? What's it doing for them?
Okay, well, you have cartilage cells duplicating and making new cartilage cells, repairing injured and degenerating ones. You have tendon and ligament cells that are repairing themselves and replacing themselves. You have joint capsules. You have muscles. You have connective tissue. You have blood vessels going in there and carrying the nutrients to the bones and joints and cartilage and ligaments and tendons and connective tissue. So, like I say, a joint is a very complex thing. A bone is a very complex thing. It's not real simple. It's, oh, I take my calcium every day. Well, what about the other 89? Okay.
You can't absorb the calcium or use the calcium without the other cofactors that go with it. I mean,
That's
when
correct.
I was in pharmacy school, when we talked about arthritis and bone and joint issues, they always told us that there's nothing you can do about it. Just give the patient a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory to help with the pain and tell them to get some good exercise and lose weight. And that was basically the extent of the advice for the bone and joint issues. And now today they've got all these biological drugs that you see advertised. And, the advertisement has a longer list of things that can go wrong than what it does for you. So
Well, Pharmacist Keith, they're just dealing with symptoms. They're not really getting down to the root cause of the problem.
yeah, it's like when you drive that car and you get that red warning light.
Yeah, exactly. You get, the pain is the red warning light, but instead of stopping and checking your oil levels and your air filter and all that kind of stuff, and checking to see, if you have if you need more lubricant in a wheel bearing someplace, instead of doing all that, they're just wanting you to go to the filling station and put some dirt from Texas in your car because they want to sell you a new engine for $5,000.
So that's the same thing the doctors are doing.
Exactly, same principle. And so this is actually quite simple. And, I have people who are 9th grade dropouts. They're high school graduates, and they've been with me for 30 years, Pharmacist Keith. They have over 500,000 people they deal with because they've rebuilt these people's knees and hips and necks and so forth. And, they'll go to a cardiologist. I'll give you a terrible story. This is one of my favorite terrible stories. Okay, this is about a U.S. congressman from Baltimore, Maryland, Elijah Cummings. He was a congressman, I think, for 25 or 30 years out of Baltimore, Maryland. He's probably, I'd say, a good 50 to 75 pounds overweight, a black fella. He was in his 60s. But just everybody loved him. Democrats loved him. Republicans loved him. Independents loved him because he was just for the people. He was a wonderful guy. But he had what was called atrial fibrillation. His heart would flip-flop in the middle of the night, wake him up, and he'd run to the emergency room. And they said, oh, you have atrial fibrillation here. We're going to have to do an ablation. Well, an ablation is where they take a red-hot soldering iron, they touch portions of your heart muscle and kill little zones in your heart to stop it from jumping around. What an insane thing to do. You're supposed to be protecting your heart, and they have an ablation procedure in which they kill portions of the heart muscle. So they take Elijah Cummings. This is, I think, just a year ago. They take Elijah Cummings. They anesthetize him. Now, these are cardiologists from Johns Hopkins. Okay? They anesthetize him. They open up his chest, take that soldering iron, and they touch his heart and they kill him. They killed Elijah Cummings with a medical procedural error here, which didn't need to happen. Now, there's two reasons.
It's not even an error. It's standard of care.
Yeah. Well, it killed him. Well, there's two reasons why people get atrial fibrillation. One is they shrink. Okay, their discs get degenerative disc disease because they're not getting the raw materials to maintain their discs, so the discs get thinner, the vertebrae get closer together, and they smash the first four thoracic spinal nerves coming out from the spinal cord, T1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and those first three the first four thoracic spinal nerves control the rate and rhythm of the heart. So if they're getting squeezed, you get atrial fibrillation. Also, if you have osteoporosis of the skull, one of the cranial nerves you're going to squeeze is the 10th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve, which controls the rate and rhythm of the heart. You can have either osteoporosis of the skull, degenerative disc disease, or both of those. You can have both of those. Okay? I mean, it's like crazy. And so instead of dealing with the joint problems, okay, and the skull osteoporosis and the degenerative disc disease, very safe, no anesthesia needed, okay, just a supplement program and a diet change so you can maximize absorption, no gluten, no wheat, butter, around oats, get rid of the gluten, maximize absorption, heal your intestines. Instead of doing all that, let's give this 90 days and see if we can improve his heart function and get him a normal heart rate as opposed to AFib. Let's give it 90 days. Nope. They ran him into the surgery room and they killed him. The doctors got a walk. They got paid full amount. Even though they didn't finish the procedure, they got paid the full amount, $100,000, whatever it was. And their kid got to go to college.
Well, while we're on the same subject of the bone and joint problems, let's talk a little bit about athletes. I mean, they tend to have more bone and joint issues than the average person, including shoulder and carpal tunnel and that type of thing. And they also tend to have other medical conditions. I mean, you tell us all the time that the average athlete life expectancy is much shorter than the average person. So, schools are starting to, it's summertime, we're hitting 90-degree weather now. We're starting to see all the kids getting back out on the practice fields, thankfully. They're letting people do that now. So what is it, what do we need to be concerned about? And, why is it that the athletes have more of an issue with these things than the average person? I mean, they're the fittest people there are.
Yeah.
They got the best nutritionists that there are. I know that our company works a lot with professional athletes. So what is it that causes them to have more problems?
Well, our professional athletes will live 25 years longer than the other professional athletes. The average lifespan of professional football players is, I think it was 62, except there's a certain group of them in some states where these professional athletes, these professional football players only live to be 58 on the average, where somebody who does everything wrong lives to be 75. Okay, so why do they live 20 years longer? They live 20 years longer than these athletes that are exercising. They've got the best professional trainers and supposedly they're getting the best diets and all this kind of stuff. Well, you have to appreciate that the sports medicine doctors know nothing about nutrition. The sports medicine doctors know nothing about nutrition. Okay, they think Red Bull and Gatorade is your best supplement. Why? Because Red Bull and Gatorade pays them under the table to say that. All right, and so it's like running your car without oil. If you run your car without, listen, you need to run your car 50 miles every day at 100 miles an hour. Okay, it'll be good for the engine. And if you don't have oil in it, even if you're not putting dirt from Texas in there, if you only have 3 quarts oil instead of 6, you're going to burn that engine up. Okay, you're not going to get 200,000 miles out of that engine. You're going to probably get 10 miles. Okay, and so this is a major problem, is misinformation going to our professional or Olympic athletes. And of course, I had so many come to me, like Theo Ratliff, a basketball player. I had, let's see here, Andy Young, who is mayor of Atlanta, also a great pastor and preacher. They were going to give him a double knee replacement. I said, sir, give me 90 days. Okay. And of course, we rebuilt him, and that's how we got into with the black athletes through Andy Young, mayor of Atlanta, and great pastor out of Atlanta, Georgia. And then also Evander Holyfield, I think, who wants to come back and box some more. He's 57 years old or something like that now. He's in great shape. But he had been boxing for 8 years. He was a champion. And of course, he had joint problems. He also had a heart problem, so he had to voluntarily give up his championship. To make a long story short, to rebuild him. He came back the next year. He had to fight to get his championship back. He got it back and fought for 3 more years before he retired a second time.
Yeah.
And now, because he's still taking our stuff, he's 57 years old and wants to come back and fight. And you have to have good shoulders and elbows and wrists and neck and back and hips and knees to be a good fighter. That's all good with him because he's taking the 90 and staying away from the bad stuff.
You didn't really touch on yet what's happening to the athletes that's causing them to be so much more mentally deficient.
Well, they sweat. And whatever few minerals they do get in their food, they sweat them out as fast as they take them in. Because sweat is not just water. Sweat is not just sodium chloride. It's not just salt water. All the nutrients floating on in your blood. I mean, they'd be better off, rather than drinking Red Bull and Gatorade, they'd be better off just taking a washcloth and soaking up all their sweat and then sucking on that washcloth every night before they go to bed. Okay? Or maybe putting it in a little pot of water and simmering it all night and then drinking that water for breakfast. But if you just lay there and do nothing, your joints and bones are going to slowly go away. But if you're exercising, you're working hard physically in a factory, or going up and down stairs, or exercising at home, you're going to be losing these nutrients faster because they come out in the sweat. And of course, Grandma didn't know why, but she had these cravings, and her grandma 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 each taught the next one, well, you can get rid of those cravings and save your teeth and all that kind of stuff, and your back pain will go away if you take wood ashes from your wood stove and, put them in your iced tea or whatever it is you're going to be drinking. Okay, and maybe even put it in your garden, and your plants will grow better, but also those plants are sucking up those minerals that were in the wood ashes. Now, the wood ashes would vary depending on where the tree grew. If the tree grew in a place that had 3 minerals in the soil, there were 3 minerals in the wood ashes. If the tree came from a place that had 15 minerals in the soil, the wood ashes had 15 minerals. If the tree came from a place that had 40 minerals in the soil, the wood ashes had 40 minerals. And when you look at the places that have the longest lived people, they are mineral people. They live near glaciers. And of course, I'll throw one more thing out. This is the bone and joints in the world. The reason why the carbon dioxide is going up for us, Keith, the reason why the ocean is dying, the reason why our reefs are dying is not because of fossil fuels. It's because of 1 million hydroelectric dams damming up the rivers to make electricity. We've shut off the food supply to the reefs. We've shut off the food supply to the oceans. And the food supply is the minerals coming from volcanoes, okay, volcanic ash. When you look at reefs, they always occur where there's volcanic island chains. Okay, so all we have to do is auger the silt from behind the dams, through the dams, over the dams, around the dams, and use our blooming minerals and feed the reefs. We'll save the reefs. And that's another project I have for 2021, is to save the Great Barrier Reef and show them I'm correct and they're all wrong. And the algae in the ocean, its job is to take the carbon dioxide out of the air, crack it in half, put the oxygen into the atmosphere, which we like, right? And then it takes the carbon, the algae takes the carbon that's left over from the carbon dioxide and converts it into carbohydrates, into amino acids, and also into energy, right? Fuel, and also carbon chains for fiber. But it requires 17 minerals for the biological process to do that. And guess what? They're not getting those 17 minerals, so they can't do that anymore. And so that's why the carbon dioxide is going up, not because of fossil fuels, is because the algae cannot do their job, because we've cut off the food supply to the algae for the biological function that breaks up the carbon dioxide and turns it into useful stuff.
Yeah. That's what used to drive me nuts. I mean, I went to one of the top 3 pharmacy schools in the country, and we were learning about how all these minerals drive the chemical reactions in the body to make all these things, and they never talked about mineral deficiencies as a problem. Let's go back to the young student athletes. What should parents be doing right now with those athletes, nutritionally and otherwise, to prevent them from having the problems that we're seeing? I mean, every year when I'm with you, you bring out all these articles of more and more student athletes that are dying on the practice fields. So they're so young. How can they be so deficient so early? And what can the parents do to ensure they have a nice, healthy, long, professional, hopefully athletic career someday?
Well, Pharmacist Keith, Milan and I did 1,700 autopsies on kids under the age of 10 in Qishan province, China. They have the highest death rate of teenagers of anywhere in the world. It's called Qishan disease, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy heart disease. We've got that study published in 3 languages, okay, Mandarin and Cantonese and Chinese and English. It's in the Journal of Trace Animal Research, 1990, so you can look it up and see that I'm not lying. That same nutritional deficiency was the cause of cystic fibrosis, supposedly a genetic disease. No, it's a simple nutritional deficiency. It was also the cause of muscular dystrophy, supposed to be a genetic disease, just a simple nutritional deficiency disease. And also sudden infant death syndrome, or crib death. Only 2% of the babies dying of crib death were in bed with their mothers when they died. 98% weren't. None of them suffocated, because I went back and redid a bunch of those autopsies. None of them suffocated to death. They all died from hypertrophic cardiomyopathy heart disease. We got a win in federal court to put that nutrient into baby formulas. The reason why we have all these genetic diseases in America and our young kids is because the baby formulas, Enfamil, Similac, only had 3 minerals in there. They required 60, but they only put 3 minerals in the baby formulas during the Second World War, because mothers were busy in the factories and they couldn't breastfeed them. They only put 3 minerals in there, none of which were the ones that prevented that Qishan disease heart attack. So that's why we had all these childhood diseases. And they said, oh, they're genetic, or the mother slept on them, that kind of stuff. No. Yeah. So to make a long story short, April 16, 2013, the federal court gave us a win, forced the manufacturers of baby formulas, Enfamil, Similac, to put this one nutrient. I tried for many years to have all 60 nutrients put in. They wouldn't do it, but this one, they said, okay, 1,700 autopsies, we can't argue with that. So they forced the manufacturers to put this one nutrient in. 1 year later, September 13th, 2014, the Charlotte Observer, big newspaper in Charlotte, North Carolina, just like New York Times for New York.
Right. They
said, we don't know why, but sudden infant death syndrome has vanished in North Carolina. 3 months later, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Missouri, oh, we don't know why, but sudden infant death syndrome has disappeared in Missouri. 3 months later, every newspaper in the world came out and said, we don't know why, but sudden infant death syndrome has disappeared. It's dropped down below 95% in the farmer numbers. Well, that's because that one nutrient was put into the baby formula. So I'm taking credit for that, because we're the ones that have been working on this for 40 years and finally got it all done. And so
yeah, look up those articles, and they all speculated what they thought was the issue, but as I'm reading it, it's like it made no sense at all, the things they were speculating. But they all did say that sudden infant death has practically dropped to almost nothing.
Yes, exactly. You don't hear about it anymore. Same way I gave Jerry Lewis 100 charts of kids we cured from muscular dystrophy. He got so excited he took it to the Muscular Dystrophy Association. They fired Jerry Lewis and stopped the telethon, and they've never heard from muscular dystrophy again. Okay, but at any rate, to make a long story short here, we need to make sure that we're giving all 90 essential nutrients to the athletes. Equally important, Pharmacist Keith, and doctors miss this one badly, is you have to be able to absorb the nutrients.
Right.
You are not what you eat, you are what you absorb. And the reason why with this COVID-19 virus, when a 3-year-old catches it, they get mild common cold-like symptoms. In fact, President Trump mentioned that just a couple of days ago in his speech there in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Okay. He said that when a 3-year-old gets the COVID virus, we need to open up the schools because the kids don't die from COVID virus. Okay? It's when a 65, 75, or 85-year-old grandma gets it. She gets very, very sick, has to go to the hospital. and 5% of Americans will die over the age of 65 in hospitals. In Italy, it's 10%. In Germany, right next to Italy, it's 0.5%. Why is it 5% here? It's 10% in Italy. It's only 0.5% in Germany. Well, that's because Germany's carbohydrate sources are potatoes, corn, and rice. Italy's carbohydrate sources are gluten, wheat, barley, rye, and oats. Our carbohydrate sources in America are like 75, 80% wheat, barley, rye, and oats. In some places, it's 100%. And potatoes are kind of a side thing for teenagers, you know, French fried potatoes for lunch. Okay, so we have to give up wheat, barley, rye, and oats. I'm going to repeat that. We have to give up wheat, barley, rye, and oats because they cause a problem in the intestines. Now, this is not a thing that happens light switch on, light switch off. I've been eating oats for 30 years. Why now, when I'm 60 years old, am I having a problem with oats? I don't believe you. That's because it's a drip, 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 drip problem.
Yeah.
And kids, when they're 3 years old, they may have been eating oatmeal for breakfast for 3 years, but their intestines are only at 1% damaged. So their intestines are able to absorb the nutrients, okay, which then go to the bone marrow, and the bone marrow makes white blood cells which steam up through your bloodstream to kill and eat the virus. The stem cells in your bone marrow make antibodies to go and kill the virus. But as you start getting older and you have 8, 10 different diseases, all of which are nutritional deficiency diseases, these are these pre-existing conditions, okay? And we're talking about arthritis, osteoporosis, we're talking about joint problems, we're talking about kidney stones, we're talking about kidney failure, they're on dialysis, high blood pressure, diabetes, thyroid problems, dental problems, osteoporosis of the skull, they have vertigo, they have liver problems, you name it. Oh, they've got COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. They have asthma, right? They have varicose veins. Boy, your family has bad genes. You got like 18 different diseases in your grandma and grandpa. Well, that's because they couldn't absorb the nutrients because for 65 years they've been eating wheat, barley, rye, and oats and slowly, slowly, slowly damage their intestines. And now their intestines are 98% damaged and they can't absorb enough nutrients anymore to maintain themselves.
Or they never link the damage to the intestines to all those diseases. And it's just, you know, maybe 30 years later you're starting to have symptoms for the intestine part, but over that time they weren't getting their minerals and they weren't absorbing the minerals they were getting. We've got about 10 minutes left and I've got 2 questions that folks have sent in. One of them, I think, is probably answered in that new book of yours. But this person, Rami, he was asking about teeth and teeth caries.
Okay, well, teeth, of course, require a blood supply coming up through the roots of the tooth. Okay, so the carotid arteries carrying blood into the neck and the head, and then breaks down into the mandibular arteries and alveolar arteries and everything, and they bring nutrition, okay, including minerals and vitamins to the tooth, which maintains itself from the inside because it's losing stuff on the outside, but it's maintaining itself on the inside. And so dental problems are one of the things you're going to get when you have osteoporosis of the skull. Okay, and doctors want to put in dentures, and they're going to put in implants and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to saying, well, let's get you off of gluten, let's get you on the Healthy Bone and Joint Pack, let's give you some extra vitamin D3 and some extra MSM here, and let's see if we can tighten those teeth up. That's why kids, when they're 10, 12 years old, forms his teeth, they have to go to an orthodontist and get braces put on because their teeth are floating around. They already got osteoporosis of the jawbone and the skull when they're 10, 12, 14 years old. Babies can be born with osteoporosis, but doctors think only seniors over age 65 get osteoporosis. Okay, no, you can be born with it because it's not an age thing, it's a deficiency thing.
Yeah, I've heard you tell people if they don't believe that they have a gluten problem, go 100% gluten-free for 7 days. And then on that 8th day, just eat all the gluten they can, and they'll be able to tell right away that they actually have a problem that they never knew they had before.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they'll get stomach pain and bowel pain and diarrhea and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. They never got it before, but when they had a clean system for 7 days, the system reacts when all that comes back in. Let me get to the next question, which is probably related to the bone and joint issues, but Maureen asked about neuropathy of the feet and ringing of the ears.
Okay, well, ringing in the ears, tinnitus, is caused by a squeezing of the auditory branch of the eighth cranial nerve. This is one of the featured chapters in the book. It's all in your head. Okay, that's where you get osteoporosis of the skull, squeezing the auditory branch of the eighth cranial nerve. You gradually lose your hearing, but you're also going to get tinnitus, or that tone type ringing in the ears, and it can come and go and be worse when you lay down at night and all that kind of stuff. And then let's see here, what was the other one they had?
Neuropathy of the feet.
Oh, neuropathy. Yeah, well, neuropathy, it could be due to osteoporosis of the skull squeezing the spinal cord, because the spinal cord, doctors don't even remember their anatomy. Their spinal cord is made in your brain. It comes out of the foramen magnum in the back of the skull, which is Latin for big hole, foramen magnum, okay? And when it gets squeezed, because your bones get thicker and bigger when you have osteoporosis, including the skull, and that whole diameter, inside diameter, gets littler and littler and squeezes the spinal cord, and you get a palsy. It's kind of like sciatica, the shoulder girdle. You get numbness and pain of the shoulders, the arms, the elbows, the wrists, and doctors say, oh, you have carpal tunnel syndrome. No, you have what used to be called Erb's palsy, and Erb said it was a genetic thing, so I changed it to Wallach's palsy, because we can't have people believing for the next 1,000 years that it's a genetic disease, because the medical doctor called it a genetic disease. It's really just nutritional deficiency. And then you can have degenerative, and this can also cause neuropathy in the feet, okay? But you can also have degenerative disc disease, and you're shrinking, and the lumbar vertebrae in your lower back get closer together, smash the roots of the sciatic nerves, causing sciatica, okay, or neuropathy in the feet, okay? And these are all mineral deficiency things. So, and so you're going to be treating osteoporosis of the skull, you're going to be treating degenerative disc disease. And so again, you want to take in, and if you don't have any other issues, you can go with the Healthy Bone and Joint Pack, throw in the Pro Joint FX, throw in the MSM, vitamin D3, extra collagen. If you have like 16 other issues, right, because you're 60 years old and you have all these other pre-existing conditions, you better get on the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack and throw in the extra glucogel, collagen peptides, vitamin D3, MSM, Pro Joint FX, and of course, if you're on kidney dialysis, we take people that have been on kidney dialysis for 25 years, pharmacist Keith. They have not urinated in 10 years, are on dialysis 6 days a week. Put them on this program. We throw in for circulation, because when you have dialysis, it's really just an artery problem, not a kidney problem. We put in the Ultimate Daily Classic tablets. In 2 weeks' time, they're peeing after 10 years of not peeing. In 6 weeks' time, they're off of dialysis after 25 years of being on dialysis. And so all of these things are repairable if you give your body the raw materials, because the good Lord gave us the equipment to repair, but they need the raw materials. Your bones, give it 90 days before you submit to the surgeries, and do it right. No gluten, no wheat, no barley, rye oats. That includes beer. If you're going to drink beer, it should be Japanese or Chinese beer made from rice. Okay, you cannot have Scotch, bourbon, rye whiskey, those kind of things, because they're made from wheat, barley, rye, and oats. Okay, you can have wine. Got to read the label. Some cheap wines from some of these foreign countries, they'll put 50% wine and 50% Scotch together, you know, or bourbon together, because it's cheaper that way. So, you know, they're making more money by putting the cheaper bourbon in with the wine. And so you're getting a lot of gluten, okay, in some of these red wines. And so you got to read the labels very carefully to see what it is. If it's a blend of grapes and berries, that's fine. But if it's a blend of grapes and high quality liquors, okay, no. Okay, so you got to be able to absorb gluten-free, no wheat, barley, rye, and oats. This is forever, not until you just feel better. This has got to be forever. You'll add 25, 50 healthy years to your life if you get off of gluten.
But anyhow, I want to thank you very much for getting on here again. I want to acknowledge a couple people that are on. We've got Mike Ponder is on. There's Maureen, which we already answered her question. Maria, Brandy Brogdon is on here. We have Peter Tinsley and several other people that have not put their name on there, so I don't know who they are, but I want to thank everybody for being on here. I've got 2 free gifts for anybody that's on here. If you go to the website dddlvideo.com, that's Dead Doctors Don't Lies with the letters stand for. So it's dddlvideo.com. I've got a report there from Dr. Wallach of why young athletes die. So you'll be able to download that report to learn a little bit more about that. And there's also a link to Dr. Wallach's presentation that somebody needs to go to jail. So I hope you take a chance and go get those free gifts. And while you're there, be sure to fill out the health quiz that's on there, the health evaluation, so you can learn more about your own personal health and where you stand. It's quite a few questions that's on there, and some of them you're going to think, why are they asking that? But there's a purpose to it. And when we put it all together, then that gives us a better idea of where you stand nutritionally. And after that, I can give you some recommendations of what you can do. So visit that website for your free gifts. That's dddlvideo.com. And I've already put a link to it in the show, so you can find it there. And next week, we'll be back with Dr. Wallach, same time. And I hope everybody joins us. We'll be posting this up on other sites, YouTube. It's going to be posted up on iTunes shortly. So you'll be able to share this with other people. And Dr. Wallach, before we go, is there anything else that you'd like to say? Talk about your new book or your radio show?
Well, of course, the radio shows are on Monday through Friday on a regular basis. Been doing it for over 25 years. Dead Doctors Don't Lie from noon to 1 Pacific time and 1 to 2. It's Let's Play Doctor, again, Pacific time. And so it's easy to find them because I've been on there for 25 years. And of course, this book has only been out for about 3 months. It makes the 4th book in the trilogy of books. So now it's called the quartet of books: Let's Play Doctor, Let's Play Herbal Doctor, Passport Aromatherapy, and It's All in Your Head. There's 25 different diseases people get when they have osteoporosis of the skull. And these diseases, you go to neurologists, you go to dentists, you go to eye doctors, you go to ear doctors, you go to plastic surgeons, you go to digestive doctors, you go to orthopedic surgeons because of the skull squeezing all these various bones and joints and everything. So I cannot thank you enough for making this information available. And thank you and your team. God bless you, and we look forward to being with you again next week.
Really appreciate you being on here, Dr. Wallach. And just so folks know, this is a book I use all the time. You can see it's well worn. I've been using this for years, use it in my pharmacy practice. And another one that I recommend that he did not mention is called Hell's Kitchen. And this one talks a lot about blood sugar problems and metabolic syndrome. So I recommend those 2 books as well as what Dr. Wallach already mentioned himself. Thanks again, Dr. Wallach. I'll see you on the next episode.
You bet. God bless.
God bless you too.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Dr. Wallach, and if you found value in the episode, please share it with others. Also hit that subscribe button, then be sure to hit that bell symbol and also select all so you'll be notified when I post a new episode in the future. Also, to get those free gifts that I mentioned in the video, visit dddlvideo.com. That's D as in David, D as in David, D as in David, L, video.com. And you'll get that report from Dr. Wallach on why young athletes die, as well as his video where he talks about how the medical system has failed us all, called Somebody Needs to Go to Jail. And while you're there, be sure to take that take Doc's health evaluation. The information collected, it's only going to be seen by me, and it's not going to be shared by anybody else. So visit dddlvideo.com